Thank you very much, Miro. I would like to thank you personally and the Slovak presidency, the Slovak people, for this historic moment. Sometimes we focus on what is happening today and tomorrow, and we lose a bit sight of how historic it is that Slovakia is holding the presidency for the first time. I can say that in a very complicated moment, both for the European Union, for our region and for the rest of the world, if we can judge from these 2 days of work, intense work, as you said, we've had here, the Slovak presidency is already a big success and is contributing a lot to common positions and moving forward on a series of important files. I would like to start with the last part of our works now. We had an important session with all our candidate countries, not only Turkey but also the Western Balkan countries that are candidate ones, Albania, Serbia, Montenegro and the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, showing the complete determination of the European Union and its member states to move forward with the EU integration process, in particular in the Western Balkans. There have been a lot of achievements recently and a lot of common work on countering radicalization and terrorism, but also on the management of the refugee flows, on economic ties, and we discussed together with them, we're all great partners for all of us, our future work. We had this morning a long session with our Turkish colleague, the European Affairs Minister, Mr. Celik, that I also met bilaterally yesterday evening. It was for us the first occasion to meet all together, all the 28 ministers, myself together with him, and express our full solidarity and sympathy to the Turkish people, to the Turkish institutions, the deepest respect on how institutions and people came together, also involving the opposition, to defend the democracy against an attempted coup. The European Union was very clear from the very first hours, I would say from the very first minutes, and Miro and myself were probably the first to react to that, in defence of the legitimate and democratically elected institutions, starting from the Parliament. And we re-expressed our support to the institutions and to the people of Turkey in a difficult moment. We understand very well that this can be a turning moment, a turning point for Turkey, also for the European Union and Turkish relationship. And this is also why we will use the meetings we've had today to prepare the high-level political dialogue we will hold in Ankara next Friday, when I will visit, together with Commissioner Hahn, Turkey, and hold meetings and visits to discuss both bilateral issues, regional and foreign policy issues, but also common issues that require our cooperation. I would say that the main messages we all shared with our Turkish friend is, first of all, strong recommitment to dialogue. First of all, we need to talk less about each other and more with each other. We need to also listen to each other and understand also the emotions that both in Turkish public opinion and in European public opinion, what has happened in these last weeks, the coup, the reaction to the coup has provoked, in full respect, with an open approach and with a constructive approach. And this is exactly the process we've started this morning, I would say, in a very positive atmosphere. We agreed that all previous agreements that we have among us will be continued and respected. The work is ongoing in all fields, being it on visa liberalisation, being it on upgrading the customs union, being it the management of refugee flows, but also on economic relations and energy ones. We decided that all tracks of previous determined engagement will continue in the coming weeks and months. We also have tackled some of the issues of concern. that you are very well aware of are central for all EU member states and the entire European Union. We discussed them all openly, constructively, with reciprocal respect. And it is exactly because Turkey is an important country to the European Union and is a candidate country to the European Union that we need to be so clear and so open about points on which we might have issues to discuss, namely the issues related to rule of law, the need to fair trials, some issues related to media freedom and freedom of expression, and obviously the old debate about that penalty that caused many worries in the European Union public opinion. We reaffirmed, not only us but also our Turkish friends, that the key point is facing all points on the agenda. There is no taboo in our dialogue, but facing this in a friendly, open and constructive manner. And I think we managed to do this today. We also, in the same spirit, discussed the Kurdish issue. It is very clear to the European Union and all its member states, PKK is a terrorist organization for us. At the same time, we all believe that restarting a political process to solve the Kurdish issue, including a dialogue with the HDP, would be a positive development, exactly as President Erdogan started to do a few years ago. We also mentioned with them the possibility to work together in a constructive way with the Council of Europe on some issues related to the rule of law and in particular the state of emergency that has been introduced in the country. And I am obviously in contact with the Secretary General of the Council of Europe, Mr. Jagland, to follow up this work in a practical way. By the way, this is not only an issue, the entire EU-Turkey dialogue and cooperation that is relevant to the EU and Turkey for our bilateral relations, but also it is very much relevant because in many EU countries there are large Turkish communities. So this has been a very intense exchange, dialogue, as I said, very constructive, very frank, and I'm looking forward to continue it next week in Ankara. We also had other two points on our agenda. As Miro mentioned, we discussed our contribution as European Union to have full implementation of the Minsk agreements to solve the conflict in the east of Ukraine. We are seeing in these hours a ceasefire established for the beginning of the school year that is holding. We shared altogether the wish that this could constitute a basis for further encouraging developments, and we are determined to play our part, especially when it comes to the situation of the population in the east of Ukraine. There's a lot that the European Union can do, also in cooperation with the OSCE. We also discussed the implementation of the global strategy. I presented yesterday to all the ministers proposals, very concrete proposals, very concrete timeline on specific actions we can take forward. There was an overall agreement and consensus on the fact that this is the right way forward, so I will elaborate them further in detail and present again to the ministers and also to the ministers of defence in the coming days and weeks. Let me stress that obviously we looked at the entire spectrum of our foreign and security policy, but we paid a specific attention to the field of security and defence, where we see space for the European Union to do more and to do more together. We have the basis for doing this with the existing treaties. We have apparently the political will from member states to proceed in that direction. So I put forward yesterday some concrete proposals to advance in this field very concretely in the coming weeks, and maybe the Bratislava summit mid-September could be an occasion on the level of heads of state and government to reflect also on these proposals. I'll stop here and leave space for some questions, I guess. Thank you.
Ďakujem pekne, takže priestor na pár otázok, lebo máme značné časové posuny. Poprosím vás, aby ste špecifikovali médium, za ktoré sa pýtate, na koho adresujete svoju otázku a počkali, kým k vám príde mikrofón. Nech sa páči.
As I said, work is ongoing on all the agreements we have already started to work on in the last months in a constructive way. This means that we have seen today a reaffirmation from the Turkish side to stick to the agreements we've had, in particular on the management of the refugee flows. And from our side on the visa liberalisation, which is a separate issue, there are clear benchmarks on which we are constantly working, both on the European Union side and on the Turkish side. Work has never been interrupted at working level over these last weeks. Just the day before yesterday, Commissioner Avramopoulos was in Ankara exactly discussing about this issue. And so the framework doesn't change, the benchmarks are still there, and the work to meet these benchmarks is ongoing. I hope this work can bring results and that we will manage to head in the direction that politically we decided.
Ďakujem pekne. Ďalšia otázka. Nech sa páči.
My name is Christoph Tanaye. I work for German press agency DPA. My question is for you both. It's about Minsk process and relationship to Russia. Is there a compromise inside in this meaning, for example, that steps of fulfilling Minsk process might mean that there will be steps of reducing the sanctions, so everything works step for step, or is the position in the moment more in this way that if there is not fulfilled everything, there will not be a change in the sanctions? Thank you.
This issue was not discussed among the ministers to that degree of detail. I know there is a debate, in particular in Germany, about this option, but this was not a matter we discussed yesterday. Yesterday we focused mainly not on the sanctions issue, but on the implementation of Minsk on the ground and what the EU can do apart from the sanctions to encourage, to push in the direction of a full implementation. Also because, as you know very well, I've repeated this from the very beginning, the real issue for the European Union is not the sanctions in themselves, but solving the conflict. And we should always keep in mind that our objective is contributing to solving the conflict. So yesterday we did this, and we did, as Miro was mentioning, an assessment of the implementation state of play as today, and perspectives also introduced by us, to us by foreign ministers of Germany and France. Minister Steinmeier and Minister Ayrault provided us an excellent insight on the state of play of the talks. And we all expressed our support to the Normandy format, to their work in this format, and exactly to that aim, to support this process that we had this reflection yesterday.
I can fully confirm what Federica just said. We know that sanctions are linked to the implementation of Minsk process, and therefore, instead of speculating about what to do with sanctions when there is no progress on the Minsk side, we focused yesterday our discussion on how to add greater dynamism and how to implement the Minsk process, and we had a very good discussion on that.
Thank you very much. I'm getting signals that the Eastern partners are waiting, so thank you very much for the attendance and have a nice afternoon.
Ďakujem pekne. Thank you very much.